Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Yes, we are on all streaming platforms, so you can find us. Check out the Kirby on Sports podcast. We're also on YouTube, the Kirby on Sports podcast. Check out our website as well, www.kirbyonsports.com. First and foremost, want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. Without our sponsors, the Kirby on Sports podcast would not be where it is today. We're getting ready for a very exciting show. We have a couple guests lined up throughout. It's going to be a great time. So without further ado, let's get going. Another edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast starts right now. Without further ado, let's bring on our first guest joining us on the Kirby on Sports podcast. He is known as the Podfather on Twitter, the host of the great podcast that I've known to come and love with so many great guests, the Burgundy Zone, my man Kyle. Kyle, good evening, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you, my friend?
Well, thank you so much for the invite, Josh. It's an honor to be on here. I'm ready to talk some Commanders football. Training camp is a week away, brother, and we have a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of questions are so with the Commanders and training camp. I mean, it's just not an easy off season. You know, there are always those tough questions, mainly with the front office and how the team's going to perform. Obviously, I mean, first and foremost, the one big thing was the Commanders finally re-signed Terry McLaurin. And then I mean, other than that, we have signing Carson Wentz. I know a lot of people were sort of skeptical about that in terms of how much the Commanders spent to get Carson Wentz. So, I mean, overall, generally, tell us what you're looking forward to. And even before that, will you be attending training camp? If so, what are you looking out for, Kyle?
Hey, look, I didn't get selected as one of the fans to be able to go and go to attend training camp, but hey, we were there last year and it was a fantastic time. But what I'm looking forward to at this training camp, I think, is one of my biggest questions is regarding to the offense. I know a lot of people are going to bring up the defense, but the defense was, you could say, was consistent last season. They kept teams down for the most part. But the fact was the offense could not generate enough points to be able to put them over top, to make the defense comfortable. It always felt like the defense had to play dang near perfect ball in order to win the football game. And hopefully that changes this year. And that's why the acquisition of Carson Wentz is huge. Obviously bringing in Jahan Dotson, who flourishes in deep field contested catches. And that's what Carson Wentz loves to do. How many like replays you see highlights last year of Michael Pittman just going up for long balls, right, and good catching them in air, and that we have the perfect wide receiving core to be able to combat that with. So I'm looking forward to how the offense gels, letting go of Sheriff. I'm bringing in two guys, Trey Turner, and then what's his face from not Carolina. We swapped them with the Jaguars with Andrew Norwell. We swapped with Brandon Sheriff. So I'm excited to see how the offense looks and comes out, because this is a stout D-line. And with that offense bringing in guys, and we still don't know about Chase Roullier, right? We don't know if he's going to start out on PUP, if he's going to be able to start the season, and is he going to be at full strength? And so that offensive line, that offense altogether, and I haven't even included Logan Thomas, my friend. I mean, my goodness, we don't even know what's going on there. The offense has a lot of questions. I'm really looking forward to how they turn out against this defense, especially early on in training camp.
Well, you and me both, Kyle, saw sort of, yeah, I'd say a rough draft because I mean OTAs are voluntary, but the
Right.
Commanders reached out, invited us to OTAs, which was incredible, an incredible experience. We got to meet face to face, see sort of the same things out there. Obviously, we saw Chase Young rehabbing. I would bear to say that Chase Young probably will not be on the field week one. He's still rehabbing. We saw Logan Thomas out there. For these injured guys, do you think like when they come back, they're set to break out and become what they were before, for lack of a better terms?
I think Curtis Samuel is probably the best one of that group to be able to come
I
back and
forgot him.
look his purest form. I mean, we saw him at OTAs. He looked explosive. I mean, I even made a comment to him as he was coming by signing autographs. I was like, "Man, you looked fast out there today." And he was like, "Yeah, that's what we do." And he looks normal, right? But if that was the easy cop out answer for that, but I will say probably Chase Rouillet, just because him being center, being the kind of field general on the line, getting guys squared away. I think that he is most likely to come back right away and look like his former self because not that much movement this year. And so I think that more so than Chase Young, because Chase Young is better when he's playing free, when he's not thinking a lot, when things come natural to him. And the play that comes back to my mind is like the Joe Burrow play at the goal line where he knocked the ball loose, the fumble, and which helped us win that football game. But that's what Chase has to get back to. And I fear that his injury is going to take longer for him mentally to get ready to just be playing naturally and free again instead of having to worry about explosiveness and getting off his blocks and everything. So, but with Logan Thomas, I'm confident that Logan Thomas can come back and be a red zone threat. Right away. I don't think that he's going to be the yardage, in between the 20s kind of target that he was before. I think he's going to specialize in the red zone. So that brings up John Bates. He's going to have a lot on his plate this year, and he's got the stage to prove himself. That's for sure.
I sort of want to go back to the quarterback room here. There was a quote by Taylor Heineke in a press conference, maybe a couple weeks ago, when asked about the QB1 job, and Taylor said that in his mind, that's not my goal because obviously he knows Carson Wentz is probably going to be QB1. Yeah, I mean, the success Taylor Heineke has had in the past, the quote unquote legend of Taylor Heineke. What does that mean to have a supportive backup who's this quarterback room just seems to be in a place for the Commanders where everybody's supporting each other. And with Carson Wentz taking QB1, obviously it's going to be another great learning experience for Taylor Heineke since Carson Wentz has played some pretty good football back in the day with the Eagles and he was with the Colts as well. What do you think of the quarterback situation?
I love those comments from Taylor Heineke. That means he's realistic. He understands that his best chance to win football games is catching teams off guard, catching them on their heels when they can't prepare for them. So I think that's awesome of him to say that. Look, we have to be honest about the situation. Terry McLaurin had over 1,000 receiving yards last season. The second leading receiver on the team is J.D. McKissick in yardage, which is like 393. I think with the 397 yards. And behind him was Adam Humphries with 383. So as much as we want to talk about how much of a gamer Taylor is, we do also have to understand his limitations because you are bringing the offense down. And Taylor, I think, understands that to an extent. He doesn't have the natural arm strength that Carson has. So he understands that Carson out there really does give everyone else to reach that more chance for them to reach their potential, if that makes sense, because Carson's out there and these guys are good deep downfield. I think a guy like Diami Brown did not look as good as he could have because of the quarterback situation where he excels deep downfield. We saw that back at UNC when he had Sam Howell as his quarterback. He looked his best when he was deep downfield catching these bombs. And I think that's somebody that could really flourish this season with Carson Wentz and couldn't really do so last season with Taylor Heineke. And that being said, Taylor doesn't want to get blamed for this bad season again. He knew he was a backup last season. And just because Ryan Fitzpatrick got injured, he got thrown in there and then the whole season got blamed on him. And look, it's a tough going for the kid, but he's strong, he's resilient, and that's evident in his comments, obviously, about Carson Wentz.
Obviously, the Commanders, rough year last year. I mean, and the year before that, they won the division going with a losing record. Realistically, because I've been seeing stuff floating around, I I think it's blown out of proportion. But could this be the year Ron Rivera gets put on the hot seat if the Commanders do not perform to expectation this season?
I mean, I think the easy answer is yes. Like if they completely bomb out, if they only win 3 games, obviously that's on the table based on how anything could go. Because being Washington fans, especially of this football franchise, you never know what's coming down the pipeline. I mean, the Scott McLuhan, Bruce Allen situation, you never know what can happen. So that opportunity is always going to be there. But I really doubt that they are going to be that bad. And that being said, at this moment, I think Ron Rivera has Dan Snyder's balls in his hands, honestly, to be frank, just because Ron Rivera is the one saving the face of this franchise. He's the one having to rebuild everything that Dan tore down, and that is owed respect. The fact that Ron Rivera continued to coach throughout his cancer diagnosis, having to go through all of that and still being able to have turnover in this organization, be able to get to the playoffs in the first year. I think Dan Snyder, I've made this comparison before, but I think Dan Snyder is a lot like Michael Scott from The Office, where so he is at his best when he has a number two, right? Somebody he can lean on. And for a long time, he had a guy like Vinny Serrato, a guy like Bruce Allen, who you could say were like Dwight and stuff like that. But now with Ron Rivera, it's like Jim, if that makes any sense. And so it's a good situation. He respects it, and it's a good relationship. I don't think Dan Snyder in this position, because I think Dan knows if he lets go with Ron Rivera, there's not somebody who could come in and win the grasp of the fans again. And so he would bring the heat back on himself. He doesn't want that. He wants the heat continue to look on Ron Rivera, because obviously Snyder has a lot on his plate as is.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to OTAs, you can see Ron Rivera and how, like he was with the fans. He stopped and literally took pictures with everybody. I mean, Ron
And his
Rivera.
lunch was being served to him, and he
Oh
still
yeah,
continued to do that.
I know. Yeah, that was the funny part. That whoever that was, I'm not an employee or something, just had his lunch, and
It's his
Ron.
assistant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and just went through and took pictures with everybody. I mean, with Ron Rivera coming to Washington, I think he's a leader, in my opinion, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think just give it time, if you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
eventually he'll take this team to where he wants Washington to go, and that's eventually going to be a Super Bowl. It's going to be a long, rocky road, but the pieces that are in place, I mean, I see the Commanders probably going a game or two over 500, maybe a 10-win season. Is that out of the question, Kyle? What do you think there?
I don't think it's out of the question based on the competition level and everything that goes involves with it. I know a lot of people are poo-pooing the defense, but I've said this so many times. I think naturally, based on the strength of schedule, and obviously anything can happen with these other NFL teams. Somebody can fire can spark, but the fact is, they should naturally look better off of that. And so I do think that if the defense is able to be a force, not just to control fires, but to be able to put fires out, I think that will put this team in a very, very good position, because I think this offense does need just a little bit of cushion. They don't need to play the perfect ball they did last season. They just need to give them a little bit of cushion to have some freedom to be able to test things out, especially during the season with this new bargaining agreement, the lack of contact in training camp, and the lack of preseason games at this point. There's not a lot of practice, right? And when you're pushing to the season, you're like, okay, there you go. This is it. You better learn on the fly, right? And I want the defense to be able to give them that ability. And based on the strength of schedule, they should have that early on. I just hope that they have a offensive identity by week 4. Last season, that was a big issue. The identity crisis was going on all season, and it wasn't until the 4-game stretch where they turned into a run-focused team is when they really started stretching out some wins, and that was awesome.
So training camp is coming up. I'm sure you're going to have a lot to talk about over there on the Burgundy Zone. Who knows who this man is going to pull out of his pocket as a guest. I mean, literally doing great things over there for the Burgundy Zone. I mean, Kyle, just for a little bit, tell us about the Burgundy Zone and what led to the birth of the Burgundy Zone, because I've been really interested to know about how your path to get where you were today started.
We had a group of friends. We talked about doing a fantasy football show every Sundays before the Sundays win, and basically just picking winners for that day for everybody. And over a period of time, it just got really lame, and I wanted to start my own thing, just focused on the Commanders. Just too many hands were getting involved, and Hall was involved with that, and so I knew I couldn't bring Hall on with me immediately because it would just cause friction. I didn't want that. So the one person I thought of that I knew would be perfect for it would be Michael Reed. And I knew him from high school. A very good friend of mine. He's one of the funniest people. He's very, very popular. Everyone loves Michael Reed. And he said, yeah. And then we started off from there. And then Reed kind of fell off a little bit with work. And so at that time, I was doing solo shows. And so I was working with Hall at the time. I was driving him to work every day. So we'd be talking ball. We'd be talking Commanders, Redskins, everything. And I was like, dude, you just want to be on the show now? Like, we're having great conversations. He was like, yeah, why not? And so then Hall came on, and then Reed proceeded to come back. And then from there, things just kind of like sparked, I guess you could say, during the COVID year. And it was a lot of fun to be able to experience that, because when we first started, we used to dream, like, could you imagine if we could be able to to interview a player, and not only like interview a player like through Zoom, like being there at draft night, being able to interview Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller. That was awesome. Logan Thomas, that was so freaking cool. We walked away from that saying, like, dude, we didn't think that we'd be here right now. And so like that, it's really cool to see how far things have progressed and come. And so that's why when people go and rag on the organization and everything, still saying it's the same old, I laugh at it, dude. Just because this is a complete 180, and it's hard to be able to move a mountain by yourself. And that's why we kind of need to get behind these people and help them trying to get this process over, because getting over the past is really, really hard when you're reminded of it every single day.
So, I want to go out on a stretch here, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kyle, but the Commanders are probably one of the only NFL teams to give fan podcasts who cover the team DC sports an opportunity to cover events like the draft party, go out to OTAs. I mean, for the draft party, they gave you players to interview. I mean, that's very, very rare. What a great thing to do. What are your thoughts about that and what the Commanders are doing to tailor to podcasts like us?
I think it's awesome, and it's because we're the best, to be perfectly honest with you.
Amen.
There's not another fan base out there that can even keep up with the kind of production that we're having out as a community, especially here in Washington. And we even got other fan bases trying to dip into it and here. And it shows, because I think a lot of it had to do with people saw what the benefits from having a podcast and covering the team, and that the team was giving out these gifts, essentially, you could say. And so people start clamoring to, like, oh yeah, like maybe I should start a podcast. Maybe like I'll have that opportunity. And it's absolutely beautiful to see it happen, because these other teams aren't doing that. And we deserve it. And I think it shows us as a fan base how resilient we are. And it shows that the distance between these old fans and becoming diehards again is not far away. It's just finding that link. And for some people, it was the podcast community. For some people, it's wins on the field. Other people, it's Snyder getting out of the building. And I'm not going to argue with people about it. I have my own theory about it, but I think it shows that this fan base can be electric. I like to say it's a sleeping giant, and the Commanders the front office, especially Jason Wright and company, they're showing us how to go back to being the actual giant and a force in this league, to where we can actually be who we truly are. And this is the best fan base in the world. It's just hard to get that out of us.
I mean, not even mentioning Jason Wright going back to training camp last year in Richmond. I mean, he came down and socialized with some of you all. That I mean, that was probably a great gesture to see too, that this organization is looking to change and finding unique and different ways to make their team better and better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Jason Wright, I said this to him when he got hired. I was like, dude, this is the dude. This is it. This is the guy that's going to come in and do it. And when he got hounded with these podcast interview requests, he said yeah to people. But he also understood that when he said yeah, that meant that he was going to get flooded with requests. So you know what he did? He said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule a big Zoom meeting so all these people can ask me at the same time. So everyone has the opportunity to do it. And the fact that he followed through with it, and not only did he follow through with it, he was engaged. He was happy to be there. He was excited to hear our opinions. Just speaks to the fact of who this man is, the fact that he is dependable. He's not going to leave you hanging, and he's a man of his word. It was that day that I realized that he is the right man for the job, and we need to give him the cushion necessary for him to flourish and be successful, because this is a hard job to do.
Absolutely. I mean, for you over on the Burgundy Zone, you have a lot of great guests. You interviewed Commanders player Tyler Larson. I think that's a big step. A lot of great interviews, a lot of great guests. Kyle, before we wrap things up, first and foremost, tell us where we can find the Burgundy Zone and what's to come for the Burgundy Zone this upcoming season.
Absolutely. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at the Burgundy Zone. It's very easy to find. My two co-hosts, Michael Hall's TBZ Money Mike 301, and then Mike Reed is Mike Reed 2156 for Sean Taylor and LeVar Arrington. But then you can find us on YouTube if you're into like having a video but also having it on audio. YouTube is the best spot for you. If you like strictly audio, we're on all the platforms. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. You can find us on all those. And then you can find us on Instagram as well at the Burgundy Zone. And we have a Discord chat server for our loyal fans. So you got to earn it to get in there, but it's a fun group to be a part of.
Yeah, man. So what's to come this football season? You have anything exciting planned that you care to share?
I can't really speak on what I got planned, man, because I'm always moving, Josh. I'm always moving.
Uh-oh.
But it's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun this season. And based on how everything was in 2020, the COVID year, and how we flourished to the podcast community, and then last year taking another step up in that direction, and then this offseason it was another level. I'm really excited to see what comes about with the Commanders, because not only like off the field with this community are we building, this football team is getting very, very good, and they have a favorable schedule. And so I think the Commanders in their shiny new jerseys are going to make a lot of heads turn this season. I'll tell you.
My man Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. Once again, follow him on Twitter at the Burgundy Zone. Appreciate the time, man. Let's do it again really soon, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity, man. It was an honor.
Yes, sir. And the Kirby on Sports podcast will continue right after this. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. All right, welcome back to the Kirby on Sports podcast. Once again, big thanks to my guy Kyle Roenick from the Burgundy Zone for coming on, talking anything and everything Commanders football leading up to training camp, as it is slowly but surely approaching. Now bringing on a special guest. She covers sports for Fox 31 in Denver. It is Taylor Kilgore. We'll bring her on. Taylor, how are you today?
Hi, Josh. Happy to be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing just fine. I got to ask first and foremost, how's everything up there Mile High?
I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but it's a good time to be a sports fan in Denver. We've been having a lot of fun just coming off that crazy Stanley Cup run and gearing up for training camp, Broncos training camp starting next week.
Absolutely. I mean, where to start then? Obviously, the last podcast I posted, we talked about the Stanley Cup more in depth, but we did not know who was going to win. We now know that the Colorado Avalanche have won the Stanley Cup beating the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-2 in the Stanley Cup Final Series. Obviously, I mean, Tampa Bay, they're looking to three-peat, which in the NHL is so hard to do. In Colorado, they came out, and I watched some of this series, Taylor, and I was like, man, does Colorado have enough to beat Tampa Bay? Because yes, Colorado is a very great hockey team, but were they going to be strong enough and physical enough to hold Tampa Bay back from three-peating? So what a great scene out there. What can you tell us about that whole series as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the series, the storylines were so fun because it was a meeting of the two best teams. You know, so many times in sports, we have a Cinderella story or an unexpected team that goes on a crazy late run. This just wasn't the case. These are the two teams we expected to be there. I mean, I know here in Colorado, I mean, for the last 2-3 years, they've been in the mix. The last 2 years, heavy favorites to go all the way. And so once again, they came into the season that way. And then you have Tampa, of course, with back-to-back Cup wins. I mean, it's just so fun to be a part of that. I don't care who you are. If you like sports, you like to see a team kind of start a dynasty like that. And so it was so, for us, we were spoiled with those storylines. Then you get into the nitty-gritty of the series and you're like, man, these are two juggernauts like battling it out. And it was so fun to watch. But then at the same time, at that point in the playoffs, I mean, we have players with injuries you can't even imagine. And so it's just like, who's going to be able to have just enough to get this done? And, to have it done in 6 and get it done in Tampa was so special. I will say the atmosphere there was so fun being on the road because you could just see the guys just pouring in on the ice when they were celebrating. And yeah, they would have loved to have gotten it done in Denver, but they admitted that game 5, the pressure was on and they were feeling it. I think they were a little nervous. A lot of those guys have not been in that position with a chance to lock it up, and they saw how many people were so excited. So then, they played well in that game, didn't happen. Okay, get another shot, and they got it done on the road. So, I mean, it was just an incredible run and so fun to play witness and see it all go down.
I think it was pretty terrible too. After they won the cup, it didn't even leave the ice before it got dented at the bottom.
Well, that cup has seen some major dents and injuries, already this summer, which is just so funny.
I bet. Have you covered any of the players and the celebrations? I know the iconic Stanley Cup celebration. Usually, a player gets a day with the Stanley Cup. Have you seen anything interesting with any certain celebrations with these Avalanche players?
Yeah, well, let's start with the parade because that was one for the memory books. I'll tell you that. 500,000 people downtown Denver. The first parade this season, city's seen, sports parade, I should say, since the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015. So people were out. They were excited. This team was on fire. It was so fun. The energy was insane. Probably one of the crazier days of my career, just witnessing it all. It was so cool. And then, we've been following, with everyone else on social media, seeing where the cup is going, and it's already making its way to Europe. And Jared Bednar had it earlier this week. And, it's cool because for anyone that plays hockey, that's the dream, right? Is to touch Lord Stanley's cup and be able to, whether you want to drink beer out of it, or we saw Jack Johnson have ice cream out of it with his kids last week. I mean, that's just the tradition that makes that particular piece of hardware so special. So it's been really fun to watch, and I'm excited to keep it rolling through the summer because, I mean, this city's still celebrating for sure.
Absolutely. I assume you were heavy covering this Stanley Cup final. What was one big takeaway that sort of led up or like sort of sealed the deal getting that victory 4-2 in the series against the Tampa Bay Lightning? What did you see in your mind as you were covering this series that sort of played a factor in giving them that Stanley Cup?
I think what was so impressive to me about this year's team and eventually made them champions is the fact that on any given night, they had so many different weapons that could go off. You know, we know Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, those are two of the best hockey players in all of hockey, right? We know how good they are. But the good thing about the Avalanche team is they are so deep. It didn't matter what night someone was going to step up. And there were so many different heroes that showed out at different moments in that playoff run. You know, you just think back to, I mean, overtime winners, clutch defensive stops, like, I mean, Kemper in net, Francois in net, two different goalies. I mean, that's never a good thing when you have two different guys and you got your goalie out, but look who stepped up, Francois. So like that, I think the depth has always been something we've talked about that sets this team apart. And it really showed in the playoffs. It took every single person on that roster to get that run done. But that's what good teams do, right? They lean on their depth. If it's not one guy, he's not feeling it, they got another guy to fill in. And so that's probably the one thing that really stood out for me this year.
Absolutely. In these interviews, I tend to always tie it back to DC sports, whether I mean to or on accident. But the Capitals recently picked up your former goaltender, Darcy Kempner. I'm not really sure the whole storyline. Was Colorado trying to get rid of him? Well, how did that all play out over on Colorado's side?
Well, he came in on a 1-year deal. We got him from Arizona. He's a guy that was ready to be a starter right away, and they knew they needed him, and so he stepped up. He definitely had a couple injuries, of freak injuries. I don't know if you remember in that first round series where the stick went through his goalkeeper mask, mask. Yeah, that was freaky. So he had little things like that would happen. But I mean, listen, he's a starter in this league, and he's a Stanley Cup winner. I mean, I think he's going to be great. I don't know exactly the discussions about potentially keeping him or going and signing another free agent like they ended up doing. But I think you guys will have a good goalkeeper for sure. Goalie. I don't know why I keep calling him a goalkeeper.
Well, I mean, you looked at those playoffs and the Caps got ousted in 6 because we had two goaltenders who are no longer with the Capitals that did not have any sort of playoff experience. So for the Caps, they needed that. I mean, plain and simple.
Well, and because playoff experience is invaluable and you don't know how you're going to perform until you play under those big lights like that. And I think you can definitely see how that experience plays out. You know, even with a team like Tampa Bay, you see in big moments, they were never scared of anything because they've been there before. And it just shows how many guys on that roster have had so many playoff experiences already over these past 3 years now. I mean, that stuff's important. So I think for you guys, if you already saw the downfall of not having that experience in goal, I mean, you just got a seasoned vet.
Yeah, I mean, you may or may not agree with me, but playoff hockey is a completely different atmosphere. It's nothing like the regular season. So you can have goaltenders who are looking good throughout the regular season, but if they don't have that playoff experience, that's the real issue. And I'm glad the Capitals picked up Darcy Kempner for that reason. So, I mean, he just won a Stanley Cup. So there you go.
There you go. I know he's got it forever. So yeah, I think you could say that about playoffs in any sport, any level. You know, it's like you feel the energy shift when it's all of a sudden win or go home vibes. And yeah, some players rise and some players are made for those moments. And some players, it takes a little longer to come around to it.
Yeah. Taylor, did you happen to, were you able to go down to Tampa Bay when they won?
Yeah, I was at game 6, luckily enough. We had a crew, our whole sports team, you know, a couple guys were out there for games 3 and 4, and then they came back. We all covered game 5, and then I was lucky enough to be there game 6, and I was hoping it would play out that way, and it did. And yeah, I was so grateful to be there in that moment because you just feel that energy and stepping on that ice after the game. It was very surreal, and I was just so grateful to have been along for the ride.
So what was the access like afterwards? Were you able to go down on the ice, get players' raw reactions, interview players? Tell us what that was like, and some of the interviews you had with
Yeah.
some of these players.
Well, so I was out there with one of my coworkers. His name's Aaron, and so he was actually the one that was boots on the ground on the ice. I was live, so we were between the two of us. He was grabbing the interviews, and I was doing live shots right off the ice, kind of walking everyone through it. And so we were on the air for 2-3 hours. It was crazy. We didn't leave until 2 a.m. But some of the coolest moments happened after all of the, oh, there goes our light. Some of the coolest moments happened after the cameras stopped rolling. That's when you really saw, because, you know, the players were out there with their families, their friends, just enjoying every moment of it. Interviews are happening, you know, everyone's riding that high. Well, then, you know, they made the fans leave, and slowly but surely people start getting off the ice and it gets quiet, and the players went back into the locker room and had their celebration. But then there were a couple players, Eric Johnson and Gabe Landeskog, to name a few. They came back out on the ice. They still had their skates on, and they were just skating around, and you could tell that they just weren't ready to let go of that night. You know what I mean? They wanted to just feel the energy of the ice again. And it was so cool to watch them in that very private moment. It looked like they were FaceTiming someone. I'm sure they were FaceTiming family, you know, like still on the ice hours later. So I thought that was probably my favorite memory of it all. And then, of course, just that initial moment when the bench clears and it's celebration time and they got it done. I mean, that I'll never forget that feeling.
So now the Avalanche have a whole summer before the start of next NHL season with Lord Stanley's Cup before they have to give it back. So I'm sure there will be a lot more fun that goes around in Colorado.
Absolutely.
But hey, I'll tell you one thing. Training camp is starting up sooner rather than later, and I'm sure Broncos fans have a lot to be excited for with the new QB1 in town, Russell Wilson. Taylor, I'm sure you'll be out there. I mean, I'm positive you'll be out there. Just very, just very broad. What are you looking to see out of Russell Wilson? What are you looking to see out of this Broncos team this year?
Well, I think the expectations are very high, and fair or not, it's just because Broncos country has kind of been starving for this moment where, you know, since Peyton Manning retired and they hoisted the Lombardi, you know, from that moment, we haven't made the playoffs. And so it's been really frustrating for a spoiled fan base like the Broncos, who have known so much success over the years. And it's been all about the quarterback. You know, the storylines have really been about, you've heard the term, the famous quarterback carousel in Denver, the most starting quarterbacks in X amount of years than anyone else in the team. They've been looking for the guy for 6-7 years now. So Russell Wilson, when that happened, it's funny because training camp hasn't even started, and yet this offseason has already felt like a major shift in mindset, expectation, everything, just because Russell Wilson is a guy that's just everywhere. He's so present in the city. He, you know, it's kind of crazy, but he literally, you see him at Nuggets games, Avs games, Rockies opening day. He makes the rounds. He is investing all in on Denver, and Denver's all in on him. So what I'm looking for at training camp is just, you know, a different storyline. You know, for so many years, the storyline has always been who's going to be the guy starting under center. Well, we got that taken care of. So what's the next storyline? And hopefully that is, oh man, this is one of the most well-oiled offenses, and Nathaniel Hackett has some crazy stuff up his sleeve. I can't wait to see him get to work in September.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the Broncos, if they have the right pieces around Russell Wilson, they can do some pretty magical things. But I mean, it's been a rough stretch. I mean, that stat line you just said, ever since Peyton Manning and the Broncos won the Super Bowl, they have not been to the playoffs since. They got rid of their coach, Vic Fangio. Like you said, Nathaniel Hackett, the new head coach in charge. How did you like the hire of Nathaniel Hackett? What are your thoughts on him coming in as head coach?
Well, I think it was a home run hire for a few different reasons. For one, it was just a big shift from Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio, I really thoroughly enjoyed covering him. I think he's such a guy's guy, a football guy. He's a locker room guy. He loves his players, loves his team. And it was cool to witness that. You didn't get to, as the media, we didn't get to be a part of that as much as some coaches would welcome you in a little more. Vic Fangio played it very straight, very professional, and he's been in the game for a long time, and it showed. So I was sad to see him go, but I think everyone knew that change was probably one that needed to happen. So then when they started looking, George Payton went out and he found and locked down Nathaniel Hackett, a guy who really is the polar opposite, meaning Vic Fangio, defensive mind, a defensive guy. Nathaniel Hackett, a high-flying offensive guy, offensive mind, a quarterback guy, but he also has all these other characteristics that have been so fun already for us here in Denver. He's very high energy, very happy-go-lucky, very outgoing. He'll even jump into some reps with the guys, and we see him out on the field running around. He loves loud music at practice, and that's always a discussion topic with NFL teams for whatever reason, because some coaches don't want music, or some coaches only want this kind of music. And Nathaniel Hackett is just mixing it up. He's got a ton of energy, and he really feels like this is the job for him, and this is just a team with top level talent ready to explode. And so then you add in, when they signed Russell Wilson, no one was happier than Nathaniel Hackett on that day. I mean, the guy was smiling ear to ear, and rightfully so, because he knew just what he could do with that offense with Russell Wilson leading the way. So, it was a big change, but that's the nature of pro sports, right? If things aren't working, you got to replace the talent that's the most important. And a lot of times for a football team is your head coach, your quarterback.
With the pieces the Broncos have in place, I know it's very early, but could you see potential playoffs this season?
I absolutely could. And for really the reason of, we've been saying this team's a quarterback away. You talk about the pieces around him. Well, there are some incredibly talented pieces around him. Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton. I mean, the receiver core alone, there's some guys just ready to go off. And they're healthy. This team's dealt with a lot of injuries over the years, and these guys are all healthy now. You look at the tight end, running backs. I mean, the talent is there. As long as the offensive line can lead the way and block for Russ and give him some time, I think they're going to make some magic out there.
Absolutely. I think I agree. I think it's going to be a very interesting season, but yet again, a tough division.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting as well. I forgot to mention that. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Broncos can keep up in this, the division they're in with all the other teams. It's like,
oh yeah, it's crazy. Well, and here's the funny thing. The funny thing is, you feel like these last few years, the Broncos were getting their own way. And so it wasn't even an option to compete with the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Because they would just get in their own way and things would go bad, and it's not going to happen. Well, now you feel like, okay, with Russ Wilson, you think this team has we already knew they had talent. Well, now they have a legit quarterback helping out, and this could really take them to the next level. Now, how are they going to compete in this, what everyone is describing as the toughest division in football, which I would agree. I mean, look at these teams. It's insane.
I mean, even if you're a fan, it's going to be great football to watch. Yeah, all over the board. I mean, Denver sports just doing well so far, and training camp is less than a week away.
Yeah, starts on Wednesday.
Absolutely. Any big plans for Fox 31 covering training camp? Any exciting stories you have brewing? What can you tell us?
Well, we'll be there every day with plenty of team coverage, but we are also, with the start of training camp, we are launching a brand new sports show at our station, a 30-minute weeknight sports show, the only of its kind in the Mile High City. So that will be debuting on Monday, kicking off training camp week with a bang. So we're very excited about it. It's going to have a lot of, fast movement, lots to talk about, discussion panels, interviews, analysis. It's going to have so much. And really, when you look at this city, I mean, we're just starving for it because we have so much to talk about. I mean, we haven't even mentioned the fact that we're home to the 2-time NBA MVP, Nikola Jokic. We're just spoiled here. So it's about time we get a 30 minutes to talk about it, long form sports content. So we're excited about it.
That's Taylor Kilgore. Once again, follow her on Twitter at Taylor Kilgore33. Pleasure chopping it up with you today, Taylor. Hopefully we can do it again really soon.
Likewise, I'd be happy to anytime. Thank you so much.
Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. All right, welcome back, folks. Just wanted to share a couple things with you. If you are on our YouTube page, the Kirby on Sports podcast on YouTube, you can take a look at this in full. But if not, we invite you to check out our website, www.kirbyonsports.com, and Kirby on Sports merch, where you can find all the latest gear. Represent the Kirby on Sports podcast by purchasing some merchandise. So if you're on the YouTube page, you can take a look at our new and improved website at kirbyonsports.com, where you can find everything from our recent work, the team, how we started, along with our sponsors, PM Plus Reserve, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate, along with hot links on exactly where you can listen to the Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also connect with us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, along with our latest episodes. And once again, you can find that all on our website, www.kirbyonsports.com. You can also check out some of our merch line, and if you want, just click the bottom to hit the shop, purchase some very cool Kirby on Sports merchandise today via our shop website. And also, if you would like, we'll take a look at the shop website just for a second here. Kirby on Sports merchandise, and we have everything from short sleeve to long sleeve to hoodies, all at a great price. Shipping is pretty fast. We have all the logos, all the merchandise, stickers, backpacks, phone cases, you name it, we got it. It's the Kirby on Sports podcast. It is the merchandise. It is the website. You can check us out once again, www.kirbyonsports.com, and Kirby on Sports merch. You can find that via our website, kirbyonsports.com. We'll wrap things up for you right after this.
Hey, sports fans. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Kirby on Sports podcast with founder and host Josh Kirby, along with lead contributor Dan Dembski. Like, subscribe, and give them a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation. Our company helps leaders build engaged and productive teams. Exclusively for listeners of the Kirby on Sports podcast, you can take an opportunity to discover your primary communication style and learn more about effective communication with others. Text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free copy of the Working From Home Communication Assessment, where you'll learn your primary communication style, how to better communicate with others not like you, and tips on working remotely based on your personal communication style. 10 minutes, tons of resources. Learn about yourself and your team. Again, text Kirby to 757-903-0743 for your free assessment report today. I'm Dr. Dave Miles, founder of Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, where we help you and your team be more engaged and productive by understanding each other better. Back to you, Josh.
Hey there, this is Mark Francis of Icon Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs in the Winchester surrounding area, including West Virginia, give me a call. I've got extensive experience, been in the business for almost 20 years, and would love to help you out. Track me down at Icon Real Estate, iconsells.com, or even give me a call, 540-247-1527. Again, Icon Sells, ICONSELLS.com, and I would love to chat with you and help you out. Give me a call.
That about wraps things up for another edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Big thanks to Kyle, the Burgundy Zone, and Taylor Kilgore from Fox 31 in Denver for joining me today on another exciting edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Once again, a big thanks to our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, Dr. Dave Leadership Corporation, and Mark Francis with Icon Real Estate. Without our sponsors, the Kirby on Sports podcast would not be where it is today. Once again, check out the Kirby on Sports podcast on all streaming platforms and all social media platforms. Check us out everywhere. Give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, subscribe, anything and everything. All the support we greatly appreciate. Until the next time you hear us or see us, always remember to create greatness. We say so long and peace out.